You know, the great thing about May 2nd finally being here is that soon enough, Mayweather-Pacquiao will actually happen, and that means it'll be done and fucking over with. Thank God is all I've got to say. It's been so kind of frustrating to sit there and people talk about this thing being so much bigger than it actually is, and such a big success that it really, frankly, is not. It's one thing if you sit there and base it off of certain standards and say, this is successful, this is incredibly successful. However, I look at unrealized and unfulfilled potential. When this thing could be so much more, and frankly, the promotion of the fight and so many things about it have been, to me, a complete and utter train wreck, an epic disaster. It just proves once again that when you give too much power to one individual and you let the inmates run the asylum, that everything else goes amok and it becomes one big clusterfuck. And when I think about Mayweather-Pacquiao on May 2nd, 2015, that's exactly what I think about. But the biggest thing of all that's been frustrating about this process, and I had to know it was going to come, has been the media coverage by certain entities, and one entity in particular. They've eaten this shit up. They've shitted this stuff out. They've pathetically pandered to both parties involved in the fight. And then they've given you a bunch of nonsensical fluff garbage to divert attention away from some bigger issues and to avoid asking any real serious questions that should be asked and deserve to be answered. And of course, I'm talking about ESPN and their king of the village idiots, in particular, Stephen A. Smith. You know, the whole coverage and build-up to Mayweather-Pacquiao has been absolutely ridiculous and literally almost vomit-inducing. I understand this is a big fight for boxing. It should be a huge fight for boxing. And it should be a lot bigger and a lot larger than it actually is going to be because, again, the people involved with boxing, the people that run boxing, are incompetent, nincompoop morons, period. But the way ESPN has set about over this past week of putting out this perpetual propaganda cycle about how incredibly awesome both fighters are, how incredibly awesome all steps of the process are, how incredibly awesome of a thing this freaking is, has been absolutely mind-blowing to me. I mean, they went to Vegas and sent half of their crew there for an entire freaking week. And all the while, we get shit like fluff pieces with Stephen A. Smith and his boy Floyd Money Mayweather. This is a clear-cut example to me of why journalists shouldn't be friends with the interview subjects, with the people that you're focusing on for the event. They just shouldn't. This is not like Ahmad Rashad buddying up to Michael Jordan, kind of a cool, dorky, lame-ass kind of way that didn't really bother you. This shit with Stephen A. Smith and Floyd Money Mayweather has been completely and totally ridiculous. This is the type of crap that makes you want to vomit. And in particular, what makes me want to vomit about this whole thing is the fact that ESPN, that made such a huge big deal about things like the Ray Rice situation and the Adrian Peterson situation and the Greg Hardy situation, and use that as a way to capitalize and help make themselves some money and sensationalize, again, in order to make some money, as our state-run, corporate-owned mass media likes to do. Now we sit here and we get to a serial woman abuser like Floyd Money Mayweather, and we're basically sweeping that shit entirely under the rug. Entirely under the rug. And don't you dare sit there and give me that bullshit about one lame-ass Outside the Line special with Bob Lee. Because that shit ain't cutting it, and that shit don't count. When you got freaking Stephen A. Smith sitting there talking about Floyd's $1 million cars, and talking about this shit, and talking about legacies, and all this other horse shit, why is he not asking the questions that need to be asked? Why is he not demanding that Floyd hold himself accountable, and Floyd ultimately show remorse for all the garbage he's done over the years? Instead, ESPN put out this little bit of a fluff piece for Outside of the Lines, which is exactly what they did, and they buried it where hardly it could be fucking found, because they want to show you Floyd Money Mayweather and his good buddy Stephen A. Smith doing all this hot fucking garbage. Look at the time slots that those specials ran, and the specials with Pacquiao, that's so much the better option. The womanizing tax cheat. Well, in the grand scheme of things, he's by far the lesser of two fucking evils. But instead of sitting there and calling into serious question, and serious question at that, why the NFL gets so much shit for what happens with some of their domestic abusers, all the while Floyd Mayweather, a repeat offender, a serial abuser who has been convicted of this shit on multiple occasions, that has served jail time, prison time for this. We don't ask boxing the tough questions. We don't hold boxing to the same standard. We don't sit there and question how the hell they could license this type of guy when they clearly don't have to. We don't sit there and call into question, their beliefs like we did the NFL. Why? And how does this even fit into ESPN's whole thing of being good for their business? It's not like they're carrying the fucking fight. That's what I really don't understand. It's one thing if they're trying to do that in a way to protect the NFL and the NFL shield because they carry Monday Night Football. That's a big part of what ESPN does during the fall and winter. I understand all of that. You don't want to do too much damage to the brand. But they did far more damage in their coverage to the NFL brand than what they did here with Floyd fucking Money Mayweather. And at the end of the day, Floyd Money Mayweather doesn't mean two fucking beans. He really doesn't. The only person or entity that Floyd Money Mayweather matters any fucking thing to is the sport of boxing. And here we are. Let's talk about his Bugatti. Let's talk about this bullshit convertible and that fucking $1 million car because he's a brat. Let's talk about his $25,000 mouth guards. We devoted more time and effort to talking about his car collection and his freaking mouth guards than we have to his history of being a serial woman abuser. And instead of sitting there and calling him out on this and asking him the tough questions and demanding that he be held accountable and at least show some remorse and actually answer for the shit that he has been doing and he has done. This is not accusing. This is not allegations. These are facts. These are he went to prison for them type of facts. Been convicted multiple times facts. ESPN sits there and just sweeps it under the rug. They give you just enough to pretend like they're going to give you some hard-hitting journalism. They give you just enough to pretend that they actually give a fuck. And then they're going to do whatever the hell they want. Because Stephen A. Smith is too busy slobbing off the knob of Money Mayweather, and they're too busy trying to sit there and capitalize on this stupid fight that should be a whole lot bigger than it actually fucking is, that they sweep all of this shit under the rug. Isn't it amazing in the great buildup of the fight? You have no real coverage of ESPN talking about a boycott. They're not bothering to run that outside the line special questioning Money Mayweather and the boxing commission in the state of Nevada or any of that shit. It's all fluff. It's all BS. And that's exactly what ESPN is. I remember there was a point in time that I actually liked that network and I actually respected that network. But that shit was kicked off to the side years ago. And the reason being is because of bullshit like this. Like with all the shit they did with steroids in baseball. They treated steroids in baseball as a bigger freaking deal than Floyd Money Mayweather being a serial abuser of women. Just think about that for a second. And this whole shit of Money Mayweather, well, get the picks, get the picks. Well, if you know the laws in the state of Nevada, the charges get thrown out. You can have the evidence destroyed. It's kind of hard to have pictures if you sit there and pay the bitches off and so on and so forth. I'm just saying. But ESPN made a huge thing about Adrian Peterson. They made a huge thing about Ray Rice. They still fucking talk about it. And they talked about it for months. But man, oh man, when it came to Floyd Money Mayweather, all of a sudden, we just talk about it just enough to pretend like we actually care about it and to say that we actually mentioned it and did some hard-hitting investigative journalism. We'll bury that shit in time slots that nobody fucking watches. And then we'll do the fluff that we want to do because that's what we are as a news organization, as a sports organization, is fluff. A bunch of filler fucking fluff. I hope this fight is an epic fucking flop. I hope this fight leaves people pissed off and disappointed. Because, frankly, they don't deserve a good fight. And this doesn't deserve to be a good fight. All parties involved deserve for this fight to absolutely fucking suck. Will I watch this fight? You're goddamn right I won't watch this fight. For so many different reasons. And it goes beyond just wanting to boycott because of Floyd Money Mayweather. It goes much deeper and much, much more than just that. But this coverage by ESPN, pounding it down your throats, pounding it down your throats. The way Stephen A. Smith and others have made this just a huge, big fluff thing, and they have masked over everything. You got Stephen A. Smith talking about people questioning Floyd Money Mayweather and what he's done need to grow the fuck up. No, apparently, dude, you need to grow the fuck up. Now, I've understood in the past some of what Stephen A. Smith has tried to say in terms of sometimes women need to take responsibility for things that can happen to them. And I agree with that to a degree. All the times in our society, we sit there and see a woman slap a dude or beat the hell out of a dude, and we think that's funny, that's okay, and we'll mock the dude for getting his shit slapped, for getting the shit kicked out of him. But as soon as he responds and all of a sudden he's the abuser and he's the problem and the woman's the victim, no, that's fucking bullshit. That's that double standard coward crap. But when we're talking about something like Floyd Money Mayweather, this is not him just sitting there and responding or anything like that. This is him going off and beating women and doing it repeatedly without any real reason or provocation to do so. It's not a matter of self-defense. It's a matter of a lack of self-fucking control and respect for himself and others. But we're the ones that need to grow up. No, Stephen A. Smith. You're the one that needs to fucking grow up. At the end of the day, you allege to be a journalist. You are supposed to be a journalist, which means you might actually want to bother in today's world to actually do something that most of your idiot comrades don't. That's do some fucking journalism. Do your damn job. And maybe now that is your damn job at ESPN, to be the serial ass licker of Floyd Money Mayweather and all these other idiots. But it shouldn't be. You are supposed to be a hard-hitting type of dude. You're supposed to be the one that asks the questions that other people can't ask. You're supposed to have that certain level of respect. Well, you ain't got none of it. You ain't got shit. No dignity, no self-respect. Look at me. I'm hanging out with the guy that has a lot of money, and that makes me awesome. No, that makes you complicit to the problem. And it makes you as much of a fucking problem as just about anything else involved. Fuck this fight, fuck the people involved with it, and fuck ESPN and Stephen A. Smith for the fluff shit they've done to try and pump this up and sweep so many deep-seated, important issues under the rug.